I had an experience in Lebanon that really showed me what we lack here. First of all, Lebanon is just an impossibly beautiful country. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw this stunning, visually stunning, aesthetically stunning place with the most extraordinary people you could hope to meet. Unbelievably friendly. And you're kind of thinking to yourself, this looks like the type of place that anyone in the world, but particularly in the West, would want to visit. And of course, it was at one point touted as being the holiday destination for people to go to because it's got everything. Extraordinary food, extraordinary scenery, extraordinary people. But then when you look a bit closer, you see a country and a city in Beirut, in particular, because I spent a lot of time there, that's pockmarked by war. Endless war, endless Western-backed war. It leaves you with this feeling of a deep, profound sadness that these things are going on and that we don't talk about it. We don't know about it. You kind of get the sense when you're over in this part of the world that Lebanon is just one of those countries that's war-torn. That's all we ever know about it. It's just war-torn. It doesn't have anything usually to do with us. It's kind of over there in that kind of vague brown and black kind of Middle East world. We wish they'd just sort themselves out. But look, it's always been like that and there's nothing we can do about it. I went over to Lebanon with that kind of Western perspective of it being a kind of a slightly war-torn, terroristy type of place. And boy, was I in for a shock. Because as I say, not only are these people the most beautiful, amazing people you could hope to meet, and it's such a beautiful country, but they also have something. I attended the funeral of Hassan Nasrallah, which got me into a lot of trouble, by the way, when I came back to the West, because back home, the perspective on any resistance group, particularly in that part of the world, is that they're just evil, they just love terrorism, they presumably just hang out in caves and they dream up ways of hurting the West, kind of like, for no reason at all. They just hate the West. As George Bush might say if he were here now, they hate our freedoms. And so to see and to spend time with people who were attending the funeral of this person who, if I was to go by the Western understanding, was this incorrigible terrorist, just despised the West for no reason whatsoever, an evil man leading an evil group. And yet there were 1.4 million people at his funeral. People that would be supportive of Hezbollah, but people from across the political spectrum in Lebanon, dignitaries from foreign countries. And I was fortunate enough to be in the stadium in Beirut on the occasion of his funeral, and I felt something amongst the people. It's not the wealthiest country in the world. They don't have anything like the obsession with materialism that we have in the West. But to be amongst people who were all joined together in this moment of obvious great sadness, of course, but this unified sense of we are together under a faith for some of us, but many people in attendance wouldn't be of the Shia faith. I had many people commenting when I was there and when I came back going, oh, did you talk to any Christians? I was talking to loads of Christians. I was talking to people who had different religions and a lot of people who had no religion at all. Lebanon is actually a real melting pot and probably one of the more accepting places I've ever been in my life. The Shia faith plays a huge role in that collective identity, without a doubt, but it's not exclusionary in any way, shape, or form. What binds people together, for me, as an outsider experiencing it, was the misunderstanding with which Lebanon is treated. I had one really interesting experience before the funeral, talking to a guy who had his daughter on his shoulders, and I've got 3 daughters, and I was talking to him about my kids, and he didn't come up to me and say, when you get home now, make sure you say that Hezbollah are like really cool guys. What he actually said to me was, go home and talk about the fact that we're just ordinary people like anyone else. we don't want war. We don't want to be involved in conflicts. Unfortunately, they keep coming to our door because of occupying forces, because of Western-backed occupying forces. We're not terrorists. We're ordinary people trying to live our lives. And that really stuck with me. But to go back to the funeral for a moment, so you had this stadium full of people unified by this resilience. Keep in mind, as this is going on, Israeli fighter jets are flying overhead. I couldn't quite believe it. When I first saw them, I just assumed they were part of the funeral, that it was some sort of act of recognition or whatnot. But then someone had to point out to me, oh no, they're Israeli jets, and we absolutely expected this. They're going to fly over our sovereign skies to intimidate us and to basically disrespect us on this, one of the most important, sad, momentous days, not just in the life of somebody who would describe themselves as a supporter of Hezbollah, but in Lebanon's history, because this guy is a public figure for reasons best known to themselves. One of the main channels in Lebanon had me on to talk the night before the funeral, and there was no Hezbollah supporter in the room. This was just a massive event in Lebanon. And Israeli fighter jets flew over during this momentous occasion. And I couldn't help but think to myself, what would happen if, for instance, the Queen died, or some dignitary in Germany or France or the US, and a foreign power flew their fighter jets over their sovereign space? We would be in World War III the next day. But because it happened in the Lebanon, because it happens over there in this kind of part of the world that we don't have to think about that much, it's kind of okay. And because it's Israel, it's definitely okay. And the sense of community in that stadium that day, with this unified sense of we are a resilient people, we know right from wrong, we know we are fighting and defending ourselves and resisting occupation and the brutality of colonial Western-backed forces. And we have, some of us have this faith, and we have this collective common purpose. I really felt to myself a sense of envy. I thought, what is it that binds us together back home in the West like this? What is it? There was nothing I could think of that would be like that. And I don't wish to be disrespectful, but the one thing that I can understand that's a bit like that is going to Glasgow Celtic matches. But then when the football's over, you're kind of left with yourself again. And I wonder, is there something in the Lebanese, in the Palestinians, in the wonderful people of Yemen who I met when I was in Lebanon, is there something in them that the West, certainly Western leaders and Western corporatists, do we dislike them because they show us something that we actually don't have? They mightn't have the material stuff, but they have a collective purpose, a collective identity. And is that part of the reason why we hate them and why we have to dismiss them and dehumanize them as terrorists? You know, because I think that's the ultimate dismissive, reductive act in the West, to say that this group of people, we don't have to think about why they're resisting. We don't have to think about their collective spirit. We don't have to think about our role in creating the manifold problems in that region, because we can just dismiss them as terrorists and job done. It's not something that we need to consider anymore. I just wonder, and I'd really love to hear your thoughts and comments on how we in the Western world have allowed 19 or 20 months of this mayhem to take place, not just in our name, but with our full financial backing. What is it about us that we can let that happen? It's something that I struggle with time and time again. And you can even see the people who have been silent in the last 20 months were silent because they put their jobs and their consumerism, they put that ahead of their humanity. And I would say even some of the people coming out now, we can see a lot of people speaking out now who were silent for the first 19 or 20 months. Arguably, their motivation to speak out now is also career-based. It's also money-based, because nobody wants to be the guy or girl who denied another Holocaust. So even the motivation to speak out now from some people feels to me quite measured again. Feels to me like it's still rooted in that idea of, what am I going to do financially and career-wise in a post-genocide world? Even in my own country, there's just this obsession with business, with wealth, with what are we going to do with the Irish economy? And guys, I am not an idiot, right? I know we have to look after the employment sector. I know we have to work. I'm not a fall on the ground, slap him across the head, idiotic Marxist. But what price our soul, I suppose, is what I'm getting at. What price our soul? In my own country of Ireland, that likes to posture as a pro-Palestinian country that stands with the oppressed, we say all the right things. We are now 20 months into this genocide, and Ireland has done nothing of significance, nothing of substance. We say all the right things, but we still have a roaring trade with Israel. Our central bank is still involved in the purchase of Israeli war bonds. And the Israelis have come out and said themselves, this is a fundamental cornerstone of the war effort. And our central bank in Ireland is still up to its neck in that. We still have our airports. Shannon Airport regularly has US military using our airports. When it comes to the substantive action, I would call it solidarity with substance. We again, as a country, in terms of our ruling class, always put their pockets ahead of their souls and their hearts. And I ask you, what price our soul? And what will be the effects in this period of even the ordinary person saying, I know exactly what's going on. This isn't the 1940s. We've all got devices. We're all looking at our phones 24 hours a day. We can see what's going on, and yet we have chosen to not speak out, to put the fact that we need to keep our own jobs going. We say that we've got our own children to feed, and I get that, but what happens if everyone says, I've got my own children to feed? What if everyone says, I have to look after myself? What about the categorical imperative? If we all say, no, I won't get involved, somebody else will do it, then what will happen eventually is that a bunch of brave souls in a boat will have to try and get to Gaza because the Western leaders are so completely cowardly and have lost their humanity so much that they won't step in. They will not step in. So I leave you with the thought of, what price our soul? What will a post-genocide world look like, particularly for the West that has put cash ahead of all else?